Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. My name's Luke Walcott. I run the data science and security engineering team at WatchGuard, specifically in the MDR branch. That's Managed Detection and Response. So we run the 24/7 SOC. My team has three different mandates working with the SOC. First is to build out detections, maintain all of our detections. The second one is to make sure the SOC is super efficient and high quality, which is mostly what I'm talking about today. And also the third is that I get to just build any cool AI stuff that we can think of building. So it's a pretty cool job. I've been working in this capacity. We started as Act Zero and then got acquired about a year ago. And I was with Act Zero since 2020. So since I've been working on this, the customer base has doubled and then 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 doubled, but our SOC has just doubled once. So I know a little bit about how to scale SOCs. That's what I'm going to talk about today. I should also mention I come from a technical background. I have a PhD in math. I used to work as a math professor, and so you'll notice that the slides have a lot of stuff in them. That's because I like a lot of detail and technicalities. And so feel free to ask any question of any degree of technicality, and I will gladly try and answer them. So the agenda is first just sort of some big, state of the world comments on what's going on in AI, just to kind of level set and talk about it because everything is changing so fast. Then I want to kind of talk about my definitions of automation versus augmentation. So we know what we're talking about. And the main meat of the talk is to go through discussing how my team approaches using AI to automate and to augment. I'm going to keep giving examples about, oh, the SOC does this, my SOC does this, et cetera. I think all these examples extend from specific, from a SOC capacity to kind of any tech team or any team that's trying to use AI to augment. So this talk is general enough to cover that. Also, I'll mention that my team we build a lot of stuff in-house. So like our AI agents are kind of built from the ground up. We use Claude's API to get the base level LLM hits, but from that we build our own agents using basically coding them up, linking together to get their memories and their tool calls and stuff like that. I'm not assuming that everyone does that, so I think this talk should be general enough. If you're just saying, hey, I want to, a license to get Claude inside of Excel or Claude inside of PowerPoint, or there's these AI automation tools like N8N or Zapier that are sort of helping to automate using AI, but are not you don't have to write your own code to do it. So everything I say should also apply in sort of that general context. And then my last comment is what I'm not talking about today is the details of any of these AI models, is it supervised learning or unsupervised learning? Which type of algorithm are you using? None of that's relevant. You don't have to know any of that. My team uses a ton of AI in our detections, to build high signal, low noise detections. And I'm not going to talk about any of that. This is all more about, LLM, large language model based chat bots and that sort of this newest type of AI that's come up in the last 3 years. So before I move on, we have a poll question that should pop up. It's to get a little sense of who's in the audience. So if you could fill this out. What AI augmentation tools are used in your organization? Select all that apply. Okay, about 50% have responded. Okay, we just wait another minute or so. We're up to 70%. Okay, I'm gonna end and share results. There we go. Did it show? Can we see it? Oh, it disappeared. The poll has ended. Okay. A lot of you are using tools like ChatGPT and Gemini. That one at 60%. The other one's kind of a broad spread. So that helps give me context. Thank you. Moving on. So let's talk sort of broad strokes here. If you haven't been following the news or whatever, it's helpful to just kind of check in. What is the latest? So the latest is this phrase, model overhang. So the idea is that in the last, months or half a year, models have gotten really good and models are improving very fast. But adoption into industry is kind of slow. So honestly, if you haven't tried the latest models, I encourage you to go and think of like a really hard task that you think, surely this thing is going to really struggle with, and just ask it. I mean, give it a bunch of information, give it numbers, give it spreadsheets, and you will be impressed at how these things have changed. We realized this on my team back when Claude Sonnet 4.5 came out, which is already like a year ago, that on its own, you could just ask it cybersecurity questions, and its breadth of domain knowledge was without doubt more than our human analysts and security engineers. And that was a year ago, and now we're on 4.6. So this is exciting, but at the same time, adoption into industry is slow. It's enthusiastic, but slow. I last weekend was having dinner with some lawyer friends, and I was like, I assumed everyone was going to be talking about AI, and I was like, how do you guys still have jobs? Like, hasn't AI taken over your jobs? And they were like, what AI? What are you talking about? So there's just so many industries that I forget that aren't feeling the impacts of this yet. There's a lot of startups and AI tools on the market, but this adoption is just slow right now. And there are many bad ways to use AI tools, and you see those in the news. So for example, if you don't take hallucinations seriously, it can have a big impact. There was a few stories of lawyers who just sort of asked ChatGPT to write their briefs. ChatGPT willingly, just totally made up completely imaginary legal citations, got submitted to the judge. The judge is like trying to find these citations, and the lawyers get in trouble for that. Or giving AI too much agency, where you just sort of like let it run amok on your computer and start sending emails, and like super bad from a security perspective. Or some companies seem to hope that they can just kind of have a drop-in replacement for their workers, where okay, step one, lay off 40% of your workforce. Step two, try and think about some sort of AI magic that's going to like replace them. And those so far have not been successful. So I would say the takeaway is like, now is a good time to think about adoption and to try and get it right, because this can still be a big differentiator if you're doing AI the right way to augment your workers. In the future, that may not be the case. So this is this slide is for anyone who's maybe an AI skeptic or thinks that AI is a bubble. This is a sort of perspective or framework that I think is really helpful for reading the news and thinking through like what's actually going on here. So there's sort of two very different types of AI you'll hear about. Consumer AI is the stuff that's on the internet, sort of this flood of low quality content. AI slop is what it's called. The quality is very jagged in the sense that like, on my phone, I have the Gemini app, and it's like basically it's an expert doctor. I can ask it any questions about being a doctor, or like, medical questions. But if I ask it to like make an image of my hand, it's going to give me like 7 fingers or something, so you don't know when you can trust it and when you can't. And I think some of this is because the way that these AI companies are working is they're just putting the stuff out there, however good or bad it is, and saying, oh, we just have to give it to the people, see how they want to use it. And then from that, kind of figure out what our business model is. So the result of that is that we've just, for the last few years, have just gotten a lot of like kind of mediocre AI stuff, and they're expecting us to figure out like what we like and not. The safety approach here, I think this is a big point that I want to come back to, is in that paradigm, you just sort of turn everything on and put it out there, start big, and then realize what's happening and start to build guardrails as you kind of evolve your product. And this is like doesn't really, I don't know if this is really the best approach, right? Because it's like, oops, we've got people falling in love with AIs. Maybe that's not good. Oops, we've got like, teenagers committing suicide because of AIs. Maybe that's not good. Trying to put guardrails on after this monster has been created. So that is sort of consumer AI. Not sure where it's headed. Enterprise AI is what I want to talk about. And it's just a completely different mindset. So here you're working in business and you want to cultivate AIs and think of them as like entry-level employees or co-pilot assistants. You cannot have AI slop because it's bad for business. You're going to have unhappy customers, unproductive workers, and these security risks. It's still hard to identify, what to focus on and how to work through adoption. The business model tends to be like subscriptions and APIs. I'm thinking of like Anthropic is like excelling in this enterprise AI versus consumer AI is a little more like ChatGPT and XAI's Grok. The safety approach for enterprise AI is very different. It's starting small and saying, here's this task, here's this responsibility. Would I trust an intern to do this? Like treat your AIs like day one interns. Would you trust them to do this? And then as you build that trust, you can, would I trust a senior person to do this? Would I trust a CEO to do this? As the trust grows. So my prognosis here is that this is actually an unstoppable revolution that's just going to like change every industry. And, the world 20 years from now is going to be unrecognizable. You may or may not agree with that, but I just think, well, from what I can see, that's what I think. So what can go wrong if you sort of treat enterprise AI like it is consumer AI? So here's just some funny news stories. There was a story of like a nonprofit that thought, oh, we'll just tell our AI agents like, today you should just do some random act of kindness. And so the agents decided to find people online and send them spam emails saying thank you. And this is the screenshot. They emailed Rob Pike, who's some like legendary computer scientist, and the screenshot around it, he reposted it with like quite a few expletives. He was very unhappy that this is the state of tech, is that he was getting spammed by this AI and that someone thought this was a good idea. Second bullet point, just like a month ago, there was a reported AWS outage, I think for like 18 hours, because some AI agent, saw a bug and said, oh, I know how to fix this bug. I'll just delete all the code and had to roll that back. And then the third bullet point, everyone's so into vibe coding and it's like, let's just vibe code some stuff and put it in production. Well, and then after that, we have to start rolling back and building like security services to hunt for bad code. It's sort of that approach of like turn it on first and then look for mistakes. So here's me discussing, kind of setting up this contrast of automation versus augmentation. So I think of these as differing visions. So automation is like, again, I'm talking about a SOC here. Let's have a SOC of 0. Let's just replace all the workers with AI. Let's have a fully autonomous SOC, but then how do you get there, right? Like, what's step one? I don't know. Versus augmentation, where you say the purpose of AI is to assist workers, to help them build their efficiency, build their quality, sort of help scale out the workers. And then, whether that allows you to scale your customer base or, you don't need as many humans, the role of the human kind of condenses to like the most human part. So over time, you hand off more and more to the AI as AI abilities improve. And the part that the humans are working on is sort of like the most human part. So I think of this as like a conductor of a symphony of AIs that are all working, and you're in this like peak flow state where you're just doing the most human part of your job, the most challenging thing, the part that involves like intuition or judgment or creativity, all the things that we haven't yet figured out how to get the AIs to do. Maybe, I actually think of this as like really great. Like, wouldn't you love to just have your job where all you had to do was the fun stuff, the things that you liked doing, the things that you found the most fulfilling and like challenging and engaging. In our SOC, when we have a major incident, we talk about like, okay, think about like use your spidey sense, like your spidey sense of where's the attacker, what are they trying to get to, where are they going? You know, it's this thing you can't really probably easily train an AI to have. Another phrase people have been using is centaur, this sort of like combination of AI and human. So those are very different visions. Like, is there a human involved? Is there not a human involved? If you think there's going to be a human involved, like you work towards that. It's sort of like celebrating the human versus trying to erase the human. But in practice, like obviously, you know, there's a lot of overlap between automation and augmentation. Working towards augmentation is going to involve lots of small automations, and I think that's a good thing. I mean, that's the way you do it. And then it's just in some industries, if you work towards this augmentation final state, what you'll realize is actually we can go that last mile and we don't actually need humans to do this. And now we have a fully automated, we've obtained that first vision of automation, but you don't really know, like you can't see that future from here. You know, it kind of depends on the way that AI capabilities evolve and specifics to the industry. But what you do need right now is like, let's start working today on some sort of thing that has measurable results, that's sort of going to be a reliable process of adoption or augmentation that's also sort of future-proof to upcoming AI evolutions and capabilities. So that's what I'm going to talk about. Okay, so okay, so before I actually talk about that, here's one prelude step. So there's 4 steps, but first there's step 0. I think you should all, this is sort of table stakes when we talk about AI augmentation. Everyone out there, and it sounds like from the poll, would agree with this statement that just having access to a ChatGPT or a Gemini is just so useful. You know, just the way I've just so inspired to see like my coworkers and stuff when they're like, oh yeah, why don't we just like ask Copilot and Copilot can do that for us? You know, sort of it's like the ability to just like unleash this creativity and sort of empower people to boost their own productivity is like, it's like free efficiency gains. I think what helps is to, you know, have a written clear policy, a usage policy, you know, which tools are we allowed to use, which aren't we, you know, are they training on our data, that sort of thing. Someone needs to sort that out, but then like kind of let employees just go wild using these things and realize, you know, how can I use this to, you know, organically augment myself? And this works for simple things like chatbots like ChatGPT or Gemini. It also works for more fancy agentic tools. Like if, I don't know, if you want to start using Claude Code, you have to like, or Cursor. Claude Cowork lately I've been playing with, I think is very impressive for like non-coding jobs. So anyway, I think this is goes without saying that we all should be doing this. But the bulk of my process here is, okay, so you want to augment some team's work. Step 1, you need to kind of build out a taxonomy of what they do. So you need to kind of look over their shoulders and say, like, what are all the tasks? Where are they fitting in? What is the workflow? What is the process? Try and understand exactly what it is you're trying to automate. And I'll have this working example that I return to, which is our SOC. We did this with our SOC. I've been working closely with our SOC for years. Broadly speaking, they do 3 different things. So SOC task 1, you know, we have detections that go off. We have a lot of detection engines. They trigger an alert. We actually generate a custom alert and send it directly to our customers. And that manifests as a Salesforce case on our end. Customer gets this message. It's like, you know, here's the event, here's what happened, here's some remediation instructions and, you know, our analysis of it. Now, if it's a high or critical severity alert, our SOC has a, you know, SLO that they have to go in there, look at that and follow up with the customer, basically say like, do you need help with this? Or like, you have any questions or whatever. So that's one of their jobs. And that's actually, the last time I counted, it was like 84% of the events go through that pathway. And the reason we do that is so that we have, you know, like just in a few seconds from the triggering event, you have the messages out there. So it's a very quick latency, and then the SOC can follow up on the high severity ones. The second task is, if we're not confident enough with the detection itself, first it goes to the SOC. First, it goes to the SOC for triage. They work through a runbook, an analysis runbook, and then the SOC decides, should I escalate this to the customer or not? And when they do escalate it to the customer, it's literally just they click a button, they tag it, and then that's when that alert generation happens, and we build the alert and we build the remediation instructions and send it along. So, but there is that step of like human review in between. And that's the last time I counted was 14.5% of the events the SOC deals with. And then the third type of event they're dealing with are these ad hoc things. We have a breach line anyone can call, any of our customers can call and say, oh, can you just look into this? I'm worried about this. So that sort of triggers a ad hoc investigation, or if the SOC has time and they want to do some threat hunting, or they're following up on old incidents, they're looking around. So that's only like 1 or 2% of the time. So there's our taxonomy. What you'll notice is there's already a lot of automation and AI built in because we've been working at this for a while. So the detections themselves have a ton of AI in them. This sort of noise reduction triage we have tried to make as efficient as possible, and that alert generation is as efficient as possible. But here's this example I'll return to. So once you've sort of mapped that out, you say, okay, of all those things, let's try and build AI into each of them, at least in some small, helpful way. Some tiny emphasis on tiny here. Just start tiny, start helpful. What's some little way that we can just add a little bit of augmentation here? So what you don't want to build is some sort of generalist tool, like a generic chat bot, that's like some new thing that they have, disrupts their flow. They have to like, pivot over to Clippy and start talking to Clippy about this. You're adding worker effort, and it's hard to sort of measure the impact if you have like one sort of universal tool that you're trying to solve all of the, you can't really say, where is it useful and that sort of thing. What I do propose that you build is something that's right at that location, super specific, a specialist that's helping out in some tiny way. So the goal is to reduce effort by some amount, reduce friction, and get that SOC analyst to just be like, oh, cool, this thing is here, it's helping me, and pretty soon it becomes an essential aspect of their workflow. Oh, this thing is going to pop up, it's going to help me, and it's going to kind of reduce my friction and make my life a little easier, and that becomes an essential part of their flow. It doesn't actually have to be fancy AI. It can just be some sort of simple hard-coded automation, but you're working on building that trust, and you're working on keeping something small so you can measure the impact. So to work through some examples of what this would look like, let's talk about one of those SOC tasks. So I said this first sort of scenario is, a high severity detection goes off. We generate the alert, send it directly to the customer. It's got stuff in it already, so the customer is aware. And in some of our detections, we have this like automated response where something has happened, like a password gets reset. And some of them, there's like depending on customer configuration, there's like a one-click button if you want to reset someone's password or quarantine. So all that has already happened. There's a Salesforce case. And now the analyst's job is to follow up. Okay, how's it going? Did you understand what's going on here? Do you have any questions? So in that workflow, what you don't want to build is some sort, like I said, some sort of generic chat bot. It says, hey, analyst, I'm over here, and I've been trained on this customer's data. Ask me a question about it. I can tell you whatever you need to know about this customer's data. So this is a very sort of general tool, disrupting the flow. It's probably going to get ignored. Maybe has some like annoying latency because it's got to look up, customer specific data or whatever. What you do want to build is, and what we built is, okay, after that Salesforce case lands, there's a follow-up script that takes a little bit longer. It looks at the information and it says, okay, I'm going to go query these other databases, like, what other recent detections might be relevant to this case for this customer or for this user. Hey, this user, what can we say about their like normal login behavior based on this, ML model we have that learns normal behavior for this user, collects this information, and then an LLM will summarize it and make a little sort of summary. Here's some interesting things. Here's some relevant things, but it goes into Salesforce as an internal comment. So only it's SOC facing. So it's AI generated content. We're relying on AI, but it's SOC facing. It's just something they can see. Now the analyst looks at that, and it's literally right in their workflow. They're already looking at that Salesforce case. Now there's a little extra bit of information for free, and they can decide what they want to share with their customer. So what they're getting is immediately saving them the time of running that investigation themselves, and immediately improving quality of customer interaction because the SOC analyst has that extra context. Those kind of hit those bullet points of a tiny bit of automation in the workflow, reducing friction. It's going to become an essential tool pretty quickly. Now, the next step is the sort of best case, or slightly better, would be take it to the next level. So that Salesforce case landed, instead of running like an automated script, trigger an agent, an AI agent that is sort of more context aware, looks at it and says, well, actually, what analysis should I pull from? Maybe it's got this toolbox that it can reason through, okay, which types of analyses are most relevant, compiles those, builds the summary, but then also, is smart enough to reason through, a recommendation for action. So like, what would you do? What would you share with the customer? What should the customer do? Make a recommendation, have some confidence score attached to it, have some explanation of their confidence score. Okay, and then still put it in there all sort of like FYI, and then it's the analyst who actually decides what to do. So you're taking it one step further, but the action is still being taken by the analyst. So there's an example of, we've done all three of these things actually, of how you could fit the automation in. Okay, so you've done that. You've identified different places where you can build in little pieces of automation. Now what you need to do is measure if it's working or not. Okay, so my claim is if you've scoped your automation so that it's like small enough and like tiny enough, then you'll be able to wrap it with evaluation so you can measure impact. So in my case, what would I measure? I would measure, okay, how much time is that analyst spending in getting to the point where they're responding to I forget what the mean time to first response is. There's some sort of SLO they have, but I've sped that up because I ran that analysis for them. So they just are a little bit farther along. Customer satisfaction, I could easily measure, did the customer enjoy this interaction? The analyst was able to provide them with extra information. Measuring human AI alignment is a different and also necessary part of it. So, I said you could have this agent who generates a recommendation. Hey, I think that you should do this. And then the human has their own sort of mindset. And when do they agree? When do they disagree? How can you get them to agree? How can you understand, okay, the AI is now doing what our humans do, or maybe there's a certain point where the AI starts to do better than the humans, so to measure when that particular part of that human's job has been surpassed by the AI. So to do all that, you have to have evaluations in place, and then just generally measuring AI quality. So anytime AI does anything, you have to worry about, is it hallucinating? If it's summarized, even something as simple as a summary, and we've all asked ChatGPT to summarize stuff, did it hallucinate something? Did it, provide relevant information, or did it kind of go off the rails? What was the tone? So you can evaluate things like tone. So setting guardrails and evals around quality. I could talk forever about evals because this is like a very data sciencey part of this job, and I love doing it. So if you have questions, we could follow up later. Otherwise, I should keep moving along. But my stance here is, if you can't measure these things, you're going to end up getting in trouble later on. So what you need to do is step back and go back to step 1 and step 2 and scope down your little automation pieces to a scale where you can measure these things. So that's step 3. Before we move on to step 4, which is the last step, I'm going to pause for a poll question again. So Liz, if you could turn that on. Suppose you've done steps 1 and 2 and have some of these AI automations in place. Which of these do you think is most important of these 3? This is fascinating. We're at 60%. I'm going to wait a little bit longer. Okay. So the result, 50% said human AI alignment, and then about 25 split between measuring impact and measuring AI quality. So I think this is fascinating. This shows, like, I guess I kind of agree that human AI alignment is something that, if you're approaching this in the right way, then that's something. I mean, impact is sort of a no-brainer. AI quality is kind of a no-brainer, but this concern of, like, how do you get the humans and the AI? You know, if you're making this transition from, like, handing off stuff from human to AI, how do you make sure that that's seamless and positive? And that's hard to measure. Okay, so I will carry on. I think I have like 3 more slides, and then I see some questions coming in. Okay, so where we're at, we mapped out, you know, the tasks, the processes that we're trying to automate. That was step 1. Step 2 is figuring out, you know, in each of them, or as many as possible, little ways to add automation, whether it's just a simple thing or some kind of AI or something that's simple that could turn into AI. And then you've set up these tools for measuring, you know, built-in ways that you're going to keep track of if what you've built is useful. Step 4 is, okay, just do more of that over time. Just keep going. And as you expand what you want to do, you expand in like these 4 different ways. So you want to expand the list of tasks where AI and automation is helping. So just constantly be thinking, okay, what more can we automate now? And this is changing all the time, because, you know, there are things that we can automate now that we could not automate 6 months ago or a year ago. I mean, that is the magic of these LLM-based tools, is that they allow so much more things to be automated. You want to expand regions of activity where you trust the AI. So this is related to that measuring of human and AI alignment, is building the trust and understanding, okay, am I at the point where, you know, I've had this thing helping out, you know, maybe being reviewed by a human, so keeping a human in the loop up to the point where now I trust it to go ahead and like automatically do its own thing. Of, if it's just as simple as like filling in the spreadsheet, you know, I've got Claude helping me fill out this Excel spreadsheet, and I'm just going to say, okay, I see your recommendation, go ahead, you do it, you know, change my spreadsheet. Is it that sending the AI generated content directly to the customer? So right now I talked about how we have AI generated text that gets reviewed by the SOC. It's SOC facing, and we're kind of migrating it to being customer facing. And that's a big step, because you have to trust that it's going to be right. You know, you don't want to make mistakes. You don't want to send AI slop to your customers in an incident report. They're going to be very unhappy. And then, you know, even in security, it's this question of quarantining machine. I talk to customers sometimes, and this is when I talk about this stuff, they're like, wait a minute, how can you trust the AI to go in there and start quarantining machines? You have to trust the AI. Like, you can't just do it. You have to build up that trust and understand which domains can we assign that trust, and which domains are we not confident enough to do that. So it's a gradual process, and the good news is that you just can sort of build out understanding those areas, those scenarios where you have the trust to hand the keys to the AI or not. Third one, continue building out nuance in measurement. This is one of the coolest areas because basically you can use AI to evaluate the AI, and that is very scalable. So, you know, you might start out with an AI generated summary, and your main concern is it hallucinating? But then, you know, you can build more nuance into that evaluation and say, okay, how faithful is this summary to the source content? You know, is it forgetting stuff? Is it like leaving stuff out? And then you can evolve it to like, is it relevant? Okay, so now I've got the summary. How relevant is it to the source material and the context around it? Okay. And then you can evaluate its tone. Okay, so I've got the summary. Is it the right tone? Is this the way we want to pitch it? And you can score it and evaluate it and put a number on that. And this sort of nuance is exactly drilling in on, exactly can you articulate how does the AI deviate from the human and understand where they are similar and where they're different. So again, this is like a never-ending process. This nuance can keep going deeper and deeper because you're sort of building a thing that has almost a personality, and so you're trying to capture all the aspects of that. And then, yeah, while doing this, expanding in parallel human trust and dependence. So if you're constantly adding more of these like frictionless helper things that become essential over time, they're going to be relied on, and then you're going to build that dependence, and you're just going to, that transition from the human doing it to the AI doing it will just be a lot more smoother. So the assumption here, I think I've said this multiple times, you should just try and work from a reality where these models are going to keep getting smarter. They're not going to hit a wall. 6 months from now, they're going to be able to do things that they can't do now. So how do you prepare for that, without building something that's irrelevant? Is this process I've described. So you want to kind of position yourself where you're constantly figuring out ways of reducing effort, reducing friction, making your humans more efficient. You're keeping up with the AI capabilities, following along with, oh, cool, Claude Cowork came out. Let's play with that. Let's see how we can fit that in. That's like a new functionality. We didn't have to build it. We can just pay for it, and but it can really have measurable income improvements. And you can know that because you've built in all of these measurement things. So in my mind, this is what I've described as sort of how you build towards this hyper-augmented SOC of one thing. There's a process to get there. And then, like I said, when you get there, if it turns out like actually we can automate all the humans, then sure, go ahead. You now have full automation. So I'll talk through this in my example again, return to my example. So SOC task A was high severity detection goes off, gets sent to the customer. There's a Salesforce case generated corresponding to that. And we have an analyst who's got to go in there and follow up. But we also have an AI agent who's gone in there, thought about it, done some analysis, summarized the findings, and built this recommendation that the analyst sees. Okay, so the analyst is basically showing up and seeing the output of the agent who's like done all of this work already. Okay, so what does it look like to expand the list of tasks where it's helping? So, like I mentioned, those AI summaries, instead of requiring the SOC to kind of rubber stamp it and say, okay, now I'm going to send this to the customer. If we have enough evals, we have enough feedback on what the customer wants, we can just have the AI agent automatically send that. So this is now the customer got the alert, the agent ran the analysis, the agent sent its analysis directly to the customer. The SOC analyst hasn't done anything. He just showed up and there was like this extra context had already been sent. Regions of activity where we trust the AI to take action. So, that if the AI is generating recommendations, oh, I would do this, I would quarantine this thing. Sure, at a certain point, once you build that trust, you can actually have it do that. It's the difference between having the SOC click a button that says reset password and the AI agent programmatically deciding to click that button, us letting it click that button. Another whole area is this other SOC task. So I mentioned like 14% of the SOC events that the SOC works on, they're doing like this sort of human triage. So the detection went off, it has not gone to the customer, the SOC has to work through this runbook. And that runbook is basically a recipe for automation. It's like, run this analysis, get all this stuff together, look at it and decide, is this something that needs to be escalated? So this is very non-trivial reasoning. That's why it has to go to the human for now, but we've built some AI agents that are doing that non-trivial reasoning. So we're basically removing, working on kind of transitioning those SOC task B events into SOC task A events, where the human is even less involved. And the reason we can do that is because of like, now AI agents can reason. Now they have, memory. Now they have this ability to like pull from, customer specific data sets and stuff like that. Third one, what does it look like to expand nuance and measurement? In my mind, this is, understanding that realm. The way that we're approaching it right now in our current projects is understanding the realm where the AI is struggling. So where it's, making mistakes, deviating from what a human would do, or getting confused, and setting it up so that, there will always be, assuming there will always be those areas, we can just sort of route that to a human, so there will be a domain where with full confidence, the AI can decide this should be escalated to the customer. There's a domain where with full confidence, this should be tagged a false positive. And then there's always going to be this gray area, however large it is. And in the events in there, we can reroute to a human. And then it's just understanding exactly those boundaries, which is where the nuance and measurement comes in. And then the last one, to keep expanding this human trust and dependence. If you believe what I just said about sort of like honing in on the fuzzy areas that the AI struggles and routing those to humans, my view of what our SOC is going to look like now, whether it's a SOC of 1 or it's a SOC of 14, and we just have 100 times as many customers or whatever, the human analyst job is basically, yes, there's a queue of tasks, and it's sort of each task is like, hey, this needs a little human help. The AI, all the different AIs did all this work, and they just got it almost to the finish line, but they just need a little bit of human help. And so, okay, let me review that. Let me provide that human insight or intuition or spidey sense. Boom, that one's done. Move on to the next one. So you've really you're depending on AI to do most of the work and trusting it, and you're just sort of closing that getting it across the finish line when there's a little human help needed. And those tasks could be quite diverse. It's not just reviewing an event. It could be like all sorts of AIs running all sorts of workflows, and it's just the human who's so I guess maybe all of our jobs might be this in the future, where AIs are doing most of the things that we would normally do, and our job is just sort of like working through a queue of like the human touch parts. I don't know what it's going to look like. Okay, so that's it. That's my process. Conclusion slide here. I would just say, zooming out, if you're working on trying to adopt AI tools, if someone sort of comes up to you with an AI tool, here's some questions to ask. How are you approaching it? Are you trying to say, let's directly replace, or are you saying, let's gradually assist? So are you trying to just aim for that full automation, or are you thinking through how you're going to gradually assist and augment your workers? How are you going to use this thing first? Like, what's the very first thing that this tool is going to help with? Do you understand it? Do you understand how that's going to help your workers, make their lives easier? So how do you use this thing first? Like, what's that very first tiny little thing that's going to, implement this AI tool? How are you going to trust this? And when do you trust it? If you can't answer that, then you're never going to really be comfortable using this AI tool. How do you know that this tool is aligned with your workers' wisdom and tribal knowledge and all of the stuff that humans bring to their work, right? You need to be anticipating this transition from human to AI. In order for that to happen smoothly, the AI needs to know what the humans know. Is this going to make life easier or harder for human workers? I think this is kind of a pretty good test. You can look at it and say, do the workers want this tool or not? because different companies are approaching this in different ways. And I strongly believe that, like, if you build stuff that's making the workers' life easier, it's a smoother path to augmentation and efficiency gains and productivity gains. And ask yourself, how do you measure this impact and quality? So I guess if I had to summarize it in a few sentences, so what we're doing, we're aiming to augment. We're starting with specific small task assistance that's already built into existing processes where we can measure our impact and quality. And as we are expanding this sort of across the board as these capabilities and our trust in the AI is growing. Okay. Thanks. That's the end of my slides. I'm going to pivot over to some questions that we have here. Let me just see this. So someone asked, does a human analyst and the AI ever disagree? How do you determine which one is correct to update your evaluation scores? Yes, they do disagree, and this is tough. It's a kind of a sensitive point because my team has worked on this project, what we found is that we are basically identifying mistakes that our human analysts are making. In our case, we can usually trace it back to, there is a run book. Analysts are supposed to follow a run book. If we take that run book as the source of truth, then it becomes like, how well are the humans following that run book? How well can the AI follow that run book? And the run book itself becomes sort of like the correct answer. In that case, when you don't have a run book like that, then it becomes sort of a case-by-case thing. And we do this as well. We meet with the SOC and we talk about like, oh, this incident that went off, it got tagged as this, but we think it should have gotten tagged like that. And that sort of thought process, it's a little bit like identifying mistakes that analysts made, but it's a little bit like understanding all of those sort of synapses that fire in the analyst's brain, so that we can sort of recreate that logic, like understand when is the logic in the analyst's brain programmatic enough that it can just be hard coded? When is it kind of like, it's okay for analysts to have different, if you've got 14 different analysts, they're going to have different interpretations of the data, different conclusions from the data. And you kind of want that, right? Like when you've got a team of people working on an incident, you want people with different points of view. So you don't want to you can't really, there's no one alignment. It's like aligning towards a team philosophy sort of. So we're working on that. We're working on trying to, if you believe what I just said, then like we can articulate what that team philosophy, what is that wisdom? What is the sort of like hard-won wisdom of my SOC? And can I write some of that down? And then what you do is you feed that wisdom. It's called semantic memory. You condense the wisdom of your team into text, and then you feed that text or you provide that text to the agent so that it can sort of align with that wisdom. So that's another approach. But yeah, it kind of depends. Sometimes there is one correct answer based on a runbook. Sometimes there's sort of a fuzzy correct answer, but you can still evaluate, like, are we adhering to that, broadly speaking, team wisdom about how to act. Another question. You mentioned the goal of a SOC of one. If we implement this conductor model, how many additional customers can a single analyst reasonably manage compared to a traditional SOC structure? I was thankfully, I skipped over the traditional SOC structure, so I don't really know. When I talked to, we were recently hiring a security engineer. When I was talking to them, I was amazed at their ratio of like customers to SOC analysts. When Act0 as a startup was sort of doing proof of concept, that's exactly what we measured. It was called SOC E, how many number of customers divided by SOC analyst, and we chipped away at all of our automations and efficiencies to get that number. When we got to 5, everyone got like because it was a startup, you do stuff like this, you got like a little medal. And when we got to 10, everyone got a medal. And when we got to 15, everyone got a medal. And then we stopped keeping track. And now we're up at like, I don't know, 60 or 100 customers per SOC analyst. So yeah, it's a good call out. Like, I'm not really saying SOC of one. That would be, it's more of like a philosophy. If I'm not saying lay off everyone except one analyst. If you want to scale out, you should instead think of like, how can we multiply our customer base instead of shrink our SOC team? What I would say is this is a good follow-up question if you want to ask. after the webinar, what is that number right now, our customer base divided by like our SOC team? And I think the answer is we are, the WatchGuard MDR team, SOC team is just like astoundingly efficient compared to traditional SOC structures. It's one of our pride points. I got a question here. Okay, so go forward 10 to 20 years. We have AI running in our day-to-day tasks. How will we as humans know the AI is running properly? If new workers in the future are not going to be doing these tasks, what checks and balances are there going to be performed to ensure AI is working properly? It's almost like we're preventing the new workforce from starting from the bottom and climbing the ladder. It's like using calculators in school. We should train our workforce to do math without calculators before giving them tools. But how can we do that if AI is going to be doing that for us? Yes, this is like, so there's sort of a question about like, what does this industry look like in the future? How can you have a SOC analyst who can be doing that sort of like, you know, peak expert final thing if all of those people retired and no one was like trained and built up the experience to get along to that point? I don't know. I feel like this is sort of a more industry-wide question, or like economy-wide question of how people learn things and change their jobs. I guess I'm not, I just don't know how to answer that. It's something that we're all going to have to figure out, is like, how do we build this in? And I'm still hopeful. I feel like the doomsayers that think, oh, we're all going to lose our jobs and we're going to, you know, the bottom's going to fall out and like there will be no entry-level employees. I think that that's more along the lines of like, you know, the hunters and gatherers saying, what am I going to do with all my time when the food just grows right in front of me? It's like, we'll figure out something to do. We'll figure out some way. The concept of education will change. Because this is going to be a gradual progression, there will, for a long time, be things that humans are needed to do. And so humans will get to do those and we'll learn how to do those. I can't see where it's headed at all, but I'm still optimistic that there's going to be time to sort of adapt in the big picture. And I don't know, sometimes when I watch our SOC, it's unclear to me if there is any necessary human activity there. Like, I could see a future where it's the SOC of zero. And just because, you know, when we're looking over their shoulder and we're saying, okay, you know, these analysts are making mistakes, they're not following the run book, or like, you know, here's the team wisdom. Cool, now we know it. Now we can give it to the AI and it can sort of act through that. When it comes to cybersecurity, I could see a future where every SOC is automated. It's a fully automated task. Is that good or bad? I don't know. Will there be some sort of training path so that, like, you know, there's some sort of like super skilled humans, and do we need that? I don't know. But in some ways, like, one of the reasons I think cybersecurity is a good domain for this type of question is that currently, day to day, I don't know about 5 years from now, but right now, most SOC analyst jobs are incredibly menial. They have so many things that they're doing that AI and automation could do instead. And there's just so much room for improving their happiness and like quality of life by automating as many things as possible. So maybe we can fully automate the tier 1 analysts and the tier 2 analysts, but not the tier 3 analysts. And then we just come up with a new training method to get those tier 3 analysts to tier 3. Okay. And then another comment. I don't think it's a question. Okay. Any other questions? I see comments and questions here. I think that's it. Things are still coming in, but I don't see questions yet. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining. If you have any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to us somehow. Yeah.